Stop the insanity. Get your focus back onto what really matters in life. Your faith, your family, your finances, and your future. Sit back, listen, and change the trajectory of your life. You are listening to the Money for Life podcast. Let's welcome your hosts, Teresa Kuhn and Rick Sapio.
All right, everyone, this is Rick Sapio with my partner, Teresa Kuhn, for another podcast, Money for Life, where we help you in those four massive areas achieve a life of fulfillment. And that's what it's all about. I think we go through life unconscious. We're not consciously making decisions and consciously choosing the life that we want. And someone once told me, kill snakes when they are small. And this person told me that their father told them that. And I looked at all the areas of my life where I didn't kill snakes when they were small. And wow, did I pay a heavy price. I've had employees in my firm that were like enemies in the mist. They worked for me, but they're actually working against the company. I've been in relationships with people, friendships and dating, etc., in which someone gets into my life and that person grows and grows and grows and becomes a massive problem later. Isn't it true that when we let someone or something into our lives that doesn't align with our values or with our important life objectives, that little snake, if we don't kill it when it's small and get it out of our lives, it grows and grows and grows. And all of my problems, every single one in my life, every problem I've ever had, even the massive ones, were caused because I let that little snake into my life and I let it grow and grow and grow. Instead of escorting that little tiny snake out of my life at the beginning. Teresa, where have you seen this play out in your life?
Well, I've seen it multiple times. And a great example I'll give you, actually, I'm going to start with a quote. If you see a snake, just kill it. Don't appoint a committee on snakes. Now, this is obviously talking about business, right? Don't appoint a committee on snakes. Just kill it when they're small. How often have you seen, and I can tell you as a girl, women in dating, when they're dating someone who's a problem and they date one time and they start talking about, well, he had this, he had that, and then they keep dating and keep dating and keep dating. And all of a sudden there's a group of friends, there's the committee, and all they do is talk about the snake. And so it's so funny how we all do this. It's human nature. Why don't we just kill the snake when it's small and get done with it? It's true when it comes to health. It's true when it comes to our habits. How many people you know who are alcoholics today or drug addicts or pot smokers started out as, hey, it's occasional, it's fun, it's not a big deal, I only do it on weekends. And that little snake becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. Think about money. Think about habits, friendships. It's everywhere.
There's a quote by Heather Rice, who used to be in a program that I did, and she said, doing something 100% of the time is easy. Doing it 90% of the time is hard. And you have to think about that. If I say I'm going to go on date night with my wife 52 weeks a year every Monday night, that's easier. We don't have to plan. It's just there. It's part of our lives. But if, every week I go, honey, you want to do it this week? Well, I don't know. We don't have a babysitter. I'm tired and this and that. It's the same thing with these little snakes. If you say, I'm not going to drink alcohol, as an example, then doing that 100% of the time is probably easier. And I know a lot of people that just gave it up cold turkey. Same thing with smoking, etc. So you can't let these things get in even a little bit, because 100% is better than, I'm only going to smoke one day a week. And what is that going to do? Or I love the people that say, I'm on a diet, but I can eat whatever I want on the weekends. And that's just insanity in my view. That saying I'll eat whatever I want on weekends is the little snake. But Teresa, this comes in all shapes and sizes. Let's get some new furniture in the house. And then furniture becomes an obsession and you do the whole house. It comes from, I think, we're just not satisfied with ourselves. There's always some little snake out there that we need because we're not comfortable being alone, accepting the life that we have, the good parts of it, that is, and not desiring to have someone else's life. And we all have heard the story about the grass being greener on the other lawn, but it's true. And all these little desires become little snakes that we let in, and they become massive snakes. And then you've got this massive anchor holding you back in life. So you mentioned some things like habits and health and relationships. Where else have you seen a little snake get into someone's life and become a big snake?
Rick, I see this all the time with my clients. They've made decisions when it comes to investing. And let's say gambling is an issue, but not everybody has access to a casino. There's sports betting, which is a huge industry. And I do have clients that bet on sports, and they tell me about it kind of flippantly, like no big deal. They've got it under control. There is a huge problem when it comes to betting in sports. And I bet it started as a little snake. In fact, I've got a friend, actually, I haven't seen him in decades. He was a neighbor, and his son was my son's age. And he was a huge sports bettor, huge. Every day there was a sport somewhere that he was betting on. And when his son was, I'm talking about 4 or 5 years old, he was teaching his son how to bet on sports. I was horrified. What was he teaching his child? And that was a little snake that probably became a huge snake in his life. I don't know how that addiction started for him, but it's rampant. It is everywhere. It is a huge multi-billion dollar industry. In fact, they say sports betting is bigger than the casino industry. Have you heard anything about sports betting?
Yeah, I mean, it's massive when you consider all the different ramifications of it, from little pools that people invest in locally to global sports and global soccer events like the World Cup. So I'm sure it's a massive industry. But I see the same behavior with stock accounts. They make it so easy now to set up online trading account. I think trading is free in a lot of firms. And I recently had an acquaintance who came to me, and we had lunch about 4 months ago, asking my advice because they inherited $1 million and they opened an account at an online trading firm. And while I was sitting there at lunch, he was staring at his account. And I said, the first thing to do is take that money and just put it in the whole life policy that you and I sell. You're going to get 3%. It's going to be tax efficient, and go do something else with your life. And this is just so sad. But he had lost 80% of the money in about 60 days because, of course, they make it seem like anybody can do it. And he could have had this little engine throwing off 3% tax-free yield for the rest of his life. But no, he could do it himself. And so that is one of those things. It's a little snake that I could just learn this stuff. And now, he's depressed and all this other stuff.
This is a message from our sponsor, the 100-Year Savings Solution. Rick and I do these podcasts because we want to impact people's lives in 4 areas: their faith, their family, their finances, and their future. And with the 100-Year Savings Solution, it gives you more options to live a better life in those 4 areas. It is a specially designed whole life insurance policy that gives you more for your money than you'll ever get from a bank, a CD, or the traditional savings solution. Go to 100yearsavings.com to learn more. Why is trading free today? Is it truly free? How can a business model exist on offering free trading, no commission trading? You absolutely know they're making money on the back end. And Rick, I talk about this with my clients all the time. I tell them, in terms of inheritances, set up the inheritance, if you can, to protect your child from their humanness, from their humanity. Look at this poor guy. He couldn't control himself. He's got $1 million. Now it's down to 200,000. He's depressed. How is he going to overcome that in his life? That huge mistake that he made, losing $800,000 in 60 days. It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of understanding is humanity and what happened. I see it all the time, Rick. It is devastating. Absolutely devastating. And what was that little snake? In your friend's situation, what would you define as being that little snake?
The little snake was his desire to learn an industry later in life. And It created these behaviors around trading, which consumed a massive amount of his free time, which affected his marriage, affected his net worth, etc. When you talked about inheritances, you're talking about when parents are planning on giving their kids money, when they pass or when they're older in life, you have to put all kinds of parameters around it. And I've seen a lot of people put tremendous criteria around it, like you do not get the inheritance unless you make over a certain amount of money. So if you make over 100,000 a year, anything over that, you can draw down from your inheritance. So it keeps the person motivated. They're just not getting a lump sum, which just creates stupidity in a lot of people. And I think you're underreporting what's really happening. There are trillions of dollars needlessly wasted from inheritances. It's a fact. People spend it in ways that are just ridiculous, almost like winning the lottery, not only losing it on bad investment choices, but losing it because they spent it frivolously. And so I think it's important when it comes to parents thinking about how they want to structure the inheritance is to put all kinds of parameters around it. And you could research this online and you could come up with some incredible ideas that you can then put in your strategy.
I've got a lot of strategies around this. And the number one person I butt up against with my ideas are the estate planning attorneys that are consulting my clients. And we work with some of the best estate planning attorneys in the country. And it's amazing how little restrictions they want to put on my clients' inheritances. It's insane. I believe I'm the voice of reason. I'm not trying to have a lot of control beyond the grave, so to speak. I'm trying to protect the legacy with knowing people's humanity, knowing how people are with money. There is the exception to the rule. There are people who have an inheritance and they're great stewards of that inheritance, and they have a forward-looking plan to protect that inheritance and to enrich the lives of generations to come. But the majority are not that way. And you gave a perfect example of how someone can set up an inheritance where the person is motivated. They're not just a trust fund baby. They are motivated. They have to participate in life, bring enough value to the marketplace where they're getting paid before they can tap into that inheritance. And that's a perfect example of one of the suggestions I give to my clients. In my situation, my husband and I have only one son. We couldn't have more. And so at the end of the day, my son will inherit everything we've got. Really funny story. When my son was in fourth grade, first day of class, came home and he said, "Mom, I learned today that since I'm an only child, I'm going to get everything you've got." And it was really off-putting to me. I'm like, what the heck are these kids talking about? Inheritances, right? In fourth grade. And I turned to him and I said, "Honey, you're going to have to work really, really hard because mom and dad are planning on spending all their money. So you may not have any money at all that you get as a gift." So that was just something that was very interesting to me that happened in fourth grade. And the estate planning that my husband and I have done really revolved around setting parameters on how much money my son would have access to and the contribution he needs to make in life in order for him to tap into that inheritance. If he doesn't contribute to life, we wanted to make sure that he had access to money for health reasons, right? If he's got a major illness or something that prevented him from being able to work, that he could tap into his inheritance. We wanted to make sure that if he wanted to get educated, if he wanted to become a master at something or learn something, that he could tap into the inheritance for that reason. If there was a child that he had that had great need from a medical or education perspective, he could tap into it. But otherwise, if he was not contributing to society, he could not tap into the inheritance. Also, in this day and age of marriage and relationship being so disposable, we wanted to make sure that the inheritance was in place to benefit generations to come, that the inheritance was in a structure that was protected in case he got married and that marriage didn't work out. I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure, Rick, you've seen this over and over again. People inherit money and they make that money part of the community property, and the spouse or the family ends up spending all of the money in a very quick period of time, and there's nothing to leave for legacy. One other little snake, Rick, that I see all the time with my clients is their reluctance to do any estate planning. And that's a little snake that becomes a huge snake. They may not live to see what that big snake grows to be, but the lack of estate planning becomes a huge snake for the family to contend with after the fact. That's a snake that needs to be killed right up front. Deal with it. Nobody likes to talk about what's going to happen when they die. I get it, especially when you're young. I've noticed with older people, they don't have as much issue with that conversation. But when you're young, you know what? God doesn't tell us the day and time that you're going to die. We need to do the planning. We need to do the planning up front early and make sure that that little snake that could be a huge snake and a huge problem gets killed early on.
Yeah, and inheritance is one of those small snakes as well that could become a massive snake if it's not handled right. And I've seen just recently a friend of mine gave his son a large inheritance early when he graduated college. And the kid got hooked on drugs and alcohol and hasn't gotten a job in 3 years. And he's still in his 20s. And that little snake, which is, hey, just have your inheritance early, becomes a massive snake. This topic can go into so many different areas of your life. But anytime there's something in your life that doesn't feel right, like what we just talked about with inheritances, or doesn't feel right, like having an employee that you just don't have a good feeling about, I think it's much better to eliminate that snake now. Handle it, deal with it, get it out of your life, whatever you have to do. Little snakes always become big snakes. Thanks for listening to another episode of Money for Life.
You have just experienced Money for Life. Implement these strategies today and create a life by design. Have a blessed day.